Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Total Truth Show. And here on the Total Truth Show, we want to help you break free from the lies and propaganda of the mainstream media, all the disinformation and misinformation. We want to help you blast through all of that. And my name is Ken Kleinberg, coming to you all the way from the USA, San Diego, California.
And I'm Aldwyn Altuney, known as the Media Queen from the Gold Coast in Australia.
There is a great awakening happening in the world right now, and you're going to want to come along for the ride.
A lot of lies are coming to the surface. There's a lot of awakening happening, and as this awakening is happening, people realize they've been deceived for years. They've been lied to for years around all sorts of things. A lot of people have been blind to what has been going on in the world, and now they're starting to see. They're starting to see things in a different light.
Through our show, we want to raise global consciousness to quantum critical mass. And we don't want you just to accept the things that we're saying. That goes for our guests as well. We want you to do the research for yourself. Get out there and start questioning things. Start looking things up. Do the research. We want to pave the way for a new awakened world. And we want you to come along for the ride. So with that, let's get started, you guys. Let's dive into today's episode. Once again, welcome.
Hello. Welcome to Total Truth Show, episode 130. And today we're going to chat about the truth about conflict. It is Good Friday in Australia. Happy Easter for those in this part of the world. And tomorrow it will be Good Friday in America. And our co-host today, of course, those who know this show know that my co-host, Ken Kleinberg, is from San Diego. How are you going there, Ken?
Doing great.
Excellent. And we have a fantastic guest today. Dr. Matt Miller is also from the US. So a little bit about our guest today before we chat about this very hot topic, the truth about conflict. Dr. Matt Miller is an author. He's a pastor, a coach, and public speaker with over 25 years of experience helping people in churches and communities move from anxiety and avoidance to courage. He does a lot of Christ-centered reconciliation. He's led hundreds of conversations around conflict, forgiveness, and restoration while serving people in churches in Florida, in New Jersey, Tennessee, and Missouri. He has a practical and gracious approach that helps anxious people take clear next steps towards honest conversations, repaired relationships, and renewed unity through his ministry. He's been married nearly 25 years and he has 4 children aged between 13 and 20. So going through those teenage years now, there could be a bit of conflict there in the household.
Absolutely.
Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I'm really excited to be here. It's really a great opportunity to talk with you guys. I'm so thankful. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. You know, Good Friday here in Australia, it's meant to be a time of peace and love. And all I have felt this morning is a whole lot of conflict. I felt conflict with someone in my space being incredibly negative. I've had conflict with relying on a team member who hasn't showed up this morning in time to do certain things that I wanted to get done. I've felt a lot of conflict today, interestingly. So I think this topic is perfect. And of course, we know there's a lot of conflict going on in the world right now, of course, with what's going on in Iran and the state of the world right now. There's a lot of wars, a lot of bombs being dropped all over the place. And it's not just the people that are losing their homes. It's also our planet that is being destroyed, and a lot of animals are getting killed in the process as well, which a lot of people don't talk about. But really, when a bomb goes off in one part of the world, it is going to affect other parts of the world. We have seen petrol prices nearly double in Australia, and I know around the world now with what is going on in the world. And of course, that increasing financial pressure is adding a lot of conflict for people internally as well, right? So how do we deal with conflict in our lives? Because, you know, it's bound to happen, right? So Matt, I'd love to hear from you. Why did you pick this topic today?
Well, I really do appreciate you asking me to be on the show, because I think for every single person in the world, like if you're in a relationship at some point you're going to be in conflict because there are personality differences, there are differences in understanding philosophy, what direction we want to go, limited resources that we have to decide on how to allocate and to use. And so there's so many different things that can make us be in conflict with one another. We're always going to be experiencing it. And I really believe that conflict is an opportunity for us to grow in patience, to grow in kindness, to grow in love. But sometimes it's so hard because we can be hurt, we can be left out, we can feel disrespected or dismissed. And so we've got to ask ourselves so often, why does this keep happening to me in my life? What do I need to learn about myself? How can I again grow to become a mature person who is able not only to deal with conflict, but I seek to try to help people to create cultures of reconciliation where instead of the house burning down, they've done the necessary work in advance to be able to ensure that the fire never gets started. And so I do a lot of work with individual people or with couples or with families that are experiencing tension, broken marriages, co-workers that don't get along at work. How do we deal with those? So those individual relationships. But what happens is, as you know, is that any conflict that we experience with one person can so easily spread to other people. There's a tendency for us to want to talk to someone else rather than the person. That creates a triangle. And what does that do? Then it spreads. It can be our whole office. It can be our faith community. It can be our neighborhood. So then those conflicts begin to escalate. And then we can also understand that there are forces at work in our world that seek to make us be in conflict because people who are in conflict with one another are easier to control. So there are so many forces at work to keep us in conflict. One of the reasons why I'm so excited about being on your show is that speaking the truth and being able to hear the truth helps us in such a beautiful way to navigate conflict.
Yes, I love that. And particularly this show is going to be really good for our people pleasers out there. And
Right.
for those who don't like conflict, which I have definitely been one of those people in my life. And I would say I'm a recovering people pleaser and I'm a
Mhm.
recovering perfectionist.
Sure.
I was listening to a fantastic Mel Robbins podcast where she said, you can be a kind person and a good-hearted person, and you can still tell people to F off sometimes, right? Because we do need boundaries in our life, and we do
Absolutely.
need ourselves. And in speaking your truth, it means you need to also honor yourself, not just always be nice to others and then end up resenting it because you're too nice and sacrifice everything to help others to be liked, because we all want to be liked. We all want to belong, right? And so
Absolutely.
it takes something to actually speak your mind and set some strong boundaries in a kind and loving way, right? You don't have to
Absolutely.
yell at people or throw things at people or shoot people like the Australian government has been doing lately with Desi
Mhm.
Freeman, but that's a whole other story.
Mhm.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole right now, but
Mhm.
do your own research with everything, right? Ken,
Mhm.
how are you going with conflict in your life right now?
Conflict is one of those things that, I mean, I'll be honest, a lot of times I try to avoid it. Um, what I mean by that is when there is conflict and it's because of the other person, a lot of times, instead of dealing with it, I will often just avoid the person altogether. I will often shut down. I will often, just avoid any aspect of that, especially if it's something that somebody has done wrong towards me or whatever it may be. It could be somebody at the gym. It could be, somebody, whatever. I will then kind of avoid them like the plague until I am literally faced with the situation where now I have to deal with it. And then there's a whole bunch of anxiety leading up to it, which drives me even more crazy, and all of that. So, yeah, conflict is not something that yeah, it's something that I tend to avoid at all costs. And then in result of that, a lot of times what results with me is grudges. So I'm a
Mhm.
person that typically very easily holds grudges. And yeah, so through the last, I want to say like 2 or 3 years, in recently in the last like 2 or 3 years, there's been a lot of soul searching going on. There's been a lot of deeper inner forgiveness that I've had to do, and I've had to like bring things up from the surface that have been buried for 30 years, stuff from childhood, stuff from, whatever. And I've had to really like bring that up and deal with it and release it and let it go. Because there are other things that have stemmed from that in my present life that I have seen that, I needed to deal with. And so kind of been working with somebody on that who is leading me through the process of, just digging into those deeper things. But anyhow, long way to answer that question, but there you go.
Yes. So for those joining us right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, welcome to the live episode of the show. We love for this show to be interactive. So if you could let us know where you're from in the world in the comments, that would be brilliant. And if you have any questions or comments during this show at all, please pop them in the chat and we will come to those either during the show or at the end of the show. That would be wonderful. So Matt, how do we deal with conflict, this inner conflict, the outer conflict? What are the best ways to deal with conflict in an empowering way?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you guys were talking, I was thinking about there's a tendency for us to be peacekeepers or maybe peace avoiders, where that's not really actually peace because there is a lot of internal turmoil and tension where we're doing a lot of work to make it seem like there's peace, like a veneer of peace where people aren't arguing, they're not angry, but there's unresolved issues. People are not reconciled because there's often, deep hurt. People have said things or not said things that are unresolved, but because we don't want to have a blow up or a big argument, then we just try to make everyone feel happy. So those are the peacekeepers. On the other hand, you have peace breakers, who are the folks that really will just say whatever comes to mind. They're not concerned about the feelings of others. Their boundaries are, you have to honor their boundaries no matter what. And so it's really difficult. And they're the people that tend to act like volcanoes. They can just erupt because of their own insecurity and fear that they're dealing with. And the way that they express that is through anger, harsh words, harsh treatment. It can even be physical abuse or abuse of a different kind. And so then the peacekeepers then withdraw and they're not able to stand up or stand in. But my goal for people is to give them tools to have courage so they can become peacemakers, that they have the confidence to be able to speak in their own voice, ways to confront, to be able to set boundaries, and also really to realize that it's so important to understand who you are and what's going on in you as you deal with conflict, because when people are responding to you, that's really about them. Part of it is just getting a greater understanding of who you are. And then you can become a peacemaker because you have the confidence. Sometimes it just takes some simple tools to be able to say, here's what I'd like to say. Even some simple phrases like, instead of saying, you did this and it made me mad, is to say, I felt hurt when you did this. Using an I sentence, it frames the conversation in light of how I'm experiencing this. It creates a conversation starter where you're not putting the person on the defensive, but you're merely saying, here's what's going on in me as I encounter this. And I'd like to talk with you about it. That gives you a sense of peace and confidence to be able to address these things. So our goal really is to be the kind of people that create peace because, as we mentioned a little bit in the beginning of the show, I think one of the ways that we can be resistant to the forces that are at work in our world to create polarization is by having peace in our own hearts and peace with the people that we're around, so that when all those tension points are raging online, in the news, on social media, and all over the world, we are not susceptible to falling for those things that seek to make us polarized, because we have peace in us and with the people that are around us. And when the people around us are experiencing peace, that creates a culture of reconciliation. And so it's a beautiful thing. But so those are some of the things that I think about.
Yeah, I love that. That's some great advice there. And, I have heard that before too about, I feel a certain way when this happens, because we are very quick to blame others often. And as they say, you point one finger at someone and three fingers are coming back at you. So there's always something we can take responsibility for. If there's something in your life that you're not happy with right now, that you're in conflict with, then you either speak up about it or do something about it. Otherwise, don't whinge about it, because people will only treat us as we allow them to treat us. And often we treat ourselves really badly, right? The number of times I hear people speak badly to themselves, like, oh, you're such an idiot. It's like a throwaway term. Oh, you're such an idiot. Oh, silly me, or whatever. Like, notice what you say to yourself. Notice the words that you use and how you communicate with yourself, because hurt people hurt people.
Absolutely.
Hurt people. And that was gold when I heard that, because I used to take everything so personally. And there's another thing Mel Robbins said, and it's in the 4 agreements: don't take things personally, right? Don't take everything personally. And another great Mel Robbins quote, and I listened to 2 hours of Mel Robbins the other day coming back from, I do a lot of driving between Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, where my dad is, and driving back, she said, who's hurting right now? Who do you think's hurting right now? And she said, everyone's hurting right now. Everyone's challenged right now. So practice some kindness, but also set some boundaries for yourself and practice kindness for yourself. Ask yourself and your body what it really needs. This is where, when you have faith, of course, whether it's in God or whatever your faith or belief is, having faith is absolutely crucial, I think, to help overcome conflict, because you then let it go from your humanness, this anger. And my dad always said anger is danger. Anger is danger. And so I internalized my anger for many years, which actually ended up leading to depression, as I found out many years later in my life, and also led to a lot of self-harm and a lot of, there was a big period there I did not want to be on the planet. I did not want to be alive. I hated my parents through my teenage years. There were times I hated them for bringing me into this world. I didn't want to be here. And now I am so grateful for my life. And I think to myself, the number of times people wake up whinging. They wake up whinging about everything, right? And I think to myself, there's many people didn't wake up today. There's many people actually don't get to experience another day on the planet. We have another day on the planet. And so how are you going to live your life today as if it was the last day you have on earth? How do you choose to live your life today? And personally, I want as little conflict as possible, because I don't like the feeling in my body when I am in conflict, either internally or externally. I am a massive stand for peace in the world, and peace in the world starts from within. It starts with getting to know yourself. It starts with loving yourself. It starts with building your confidence. And it starts also with speaking your truth. So to speak your truth and not worry about what other people are going to think, because there's a lot of people that don't like you right now. I can guarantee it. There's a lot of people that hate you right now, and there's a lot of people that love you right now. And so that is just going to tenfold. The more you put yourself out there, you're going to have more lovers and more haters. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because 90% of people die with regrets. And I truly believe if you speak your truth and you live true to yourself, to what you really want for your life, alignment for what is your purpose and mission on the planet, what are you here for? If you're living in alignment with what you're here on the planet for, you're not going to have that internal conflict as much as someone who is hating their life and hating being on the planet. As many people are. There's 1 in 3 people have depression. Now we've got 5 million or so people killing themselves every year. It's crazy. The amount of mental health issues out there right now is massive. And, whatever we can do to help turn that around, the better. And so another great saying that I love is, everything happens for me, not to me. And if we can just step back for a moment from whatever conflict is going on in our life and just step back and go, okay, what is the learning from this situation? Where can I take responsibility for what is going on right now? How am I tolerating or putting up with bad behavior, either for myself, to myself, or for myself to others, or others to me? This is where people stay in abusive relationships for years, and they might, and then eventually they might get out of that relationship, and then they'll attract another one exactly the same, just different, same shit, different bucket, right? So that conflict, it starts with the self-love self-love journey, which has been a massive one for me because I've
Sure.
been very hard on myself during my life.
Mhm.
And as a high achiever, I know there's a lot of high achievers that are in our community, a lot of entrepreneurs. We
Yes.
have very high standards for ourselves. And when we have very high standards for ourselves, we also expect that of others around us. So Matt, was there a time for you where you had a lot of internal conflict, or do you still sometimes around some things? And what is your actual process for moving through that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. It is interesting that you say this because when you talk about this idea of self-love, and you mentioned faith, and for me, I just believe that every person on this planet was made in the image of God, and so that then gives them inherent dignity and value, because of our Creator, and that includes me, and so we need to begin, I think, with valuing and treasuring people, of all sorts, because they have been made in God's image. But as you also mentioned, Good Friday, I think about. I also acknowledge that I am a broken person, right? I'm not always doing the thing that I want to do, and sometimes the very thing I don't want to do, I actually do. I can be harsh with my children or with my wife, or I can speak in an uncharitable way, or I can become impatient. I want to have my agenda, and I'm a kind of a charger personality, and I say, let's do this, let's take this hill or whatever, and I can leave people behind. I can just push forward my own agenda. So I realize at the same time that I've been made by God and I am fearfully and wonderfully made, I also have this brokenness to me. And so the beauty for people in my faith, a Christian, that Christ went to the cross, then that means that as I trust in Him, then I realize how much God really does love me, and so that gives me confidence then to be able to say, where are those areas of brokenness in me that I can allow God by His grace to work on, so I can forgive myself. I can say, wow, if God loves me, then I should certainly love me as well. Not to be overconfident or cocky, but to say I've got value. And then as I look at other people who are around me, even if they are behaving poorly or if they're angry, I can see them as people who have value and dignity because they're made by God. And so then I have a love for them and realize that it's possible or likely, like you said, hurt people hurt people. So if someone's angry or if they're bitter or if they're withdrawn or they're discouraged or whatever, it's because they're not living into the capability that God has made them to have. And so I have an opportunity, to love them and to encourage them so that they can see how beautifully and wonderfully they were made also, but also to acknowledge that there is this problem that we have to deal with, and that affects our relationships, because even from the very first people who ever lived, right, they were, Adam and Eve, they had broken relationship with God, with themselves, with others, and with the creation. And so that needed to be reconciled. And so the purpose of the ministry that I have, Courage to Reconcile, comes from the reconciliation that we can have with God through, I believe, through Christ. But then that then gives us a great patience and a great love and a great desire to pursue those relationships and to be able to have confidence to speak. And so much of what we do is to think reflectively on what's happening in me. So you ask about a pattern or a framework. One of the things that I talk about in my school community is the CALM framework. And it's just a process after you have discerned whether or not I want to take up this issue. So a conflict results when there's a disagreement, the stakes are high, and there's emotions involved. And those are three characteristics where it's a significant conflict. And I've got to decide, well, is this something that I want to engage in? Because sometimes it's wise for me to overlook. I can't take up every issue that's going on. It would take too much time, and I'm maybe being too sensitive. So I've got to decide, should I overlook or should I engage? But if I do decide that I want to engage because it's a pattern, it keeps happening, it's affected my productivity, it's affected my relationship with that person, it's affecting how we work together or our community, I decide I do want to engage. I go through this, what I call the CALM framework. And the first part of it is I just have to check my own heart. C stands for check. Like, what's going on in me? Am I wanting revenge, or am I desiring to restore the relationship? I have to ask myself, what are the areas that I've contributed to this conflict? Am I being unreasonable? Am I being too sensitive? And just ask myself honestly those questions and just check myself before I come in. And then I want to approach with grace. It's I want to come to the conversation seeing the other person as valuable, having significance, even if we're disagreeing in a heated way, maybe even they've hurt me, I recognize that they are a person who's important. If we're in relationship, they're significant. So I want to come to them, seeing them in that light. And then that helps me to approach them with real honesty, but also with integrity, because I don't want to harm them either, even if they've possibly even hurt me. And the L stands for listen attentively. I know for me, so many times I'm just ready with my argument and I'm pretty quick with my words. And so I could just tell you exactly how you're wrong. So I need to take a deep breath, remain calm, and listen and say, help me understand. And I've just found that when I think one thing I learned is that the health of an organization or community or team is you can determine by how quickly you move from conflict, which is disagreement between, the stakes are high, there's emotions and there's a disagreement, to the amount of time that you go from that to conversation. Because the longer we wait, the more there's a tendency for us to fill in a story about why that person is doing what they're doing. Oh, they're just the kind of person that does this, or they wouldn't ever, accept a bald guy with a gray beard, or whatever it is. They have these.
That's what happens with me. That's exactly what happens with me. Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, we just tell a story about what we think they're doing. And the longer we go without addressing it, the wilder and crazier those stories can become. And so now you obviously have to be careful, because if there's real harm happening, you don't want to enter in an abusive situation. But it is, once you're calm, is to enter this and to listen attentively and to really seek to understand. And then the M stands for just to move toward reconciliation. It's to say, how can we work together in this, even if we don't disagree on the end result? We have to agree to disagree. But how do we value the relationship that we have over being right about the issue? Because so often we need to be able to compromise. Now, there are times when a leader, or the leader of an organization, of a community, must make a decision to say, this is what I feel like is the right thing to do, even after receiving all the feedback from other people. But usually it's inviting people into the conversation, making sure that they feel heard and known and understood. And then when that happens, then they typically come along. And so that practical aspect of how do we move toward reconciliation? So it's checking my heart, it's approaching with grace, it's listening attentively, and then it's moving toward reconciliation. And that's just a simple framework that, again, maybe hits a little bit of a pause on my emotions so that I'm able to say, I felt this way when this was going on. Can I check in with you? What's happening? That's one tool that I use in my community to help people.
Oh, I love that. That is so cool. And Ken, what did you get from that little framework there? What stood out for you?
I think one of the main things that, just being careful not to, how do I want to put this? Oh my goodness. Because my aha moment is when you started sharing about how when this conflict is left alone, all of a sudden your brain starts creating different scenarios. And that is me to the point. Exactly. That's what happens with me all the time. And I have had to learn to recognize it and to see through it, and then push myself to go and resolve that conflict. And what's funny is when I do, or the so-called conflict, that's the other thing. Sometimes I will create conflict when there is no conflict. It can even be a person who might have just said something to me in a tone that I took wrong, but they meant absolutely nothing about it. And then throughout the week, I have created a whole scenario in my head around that. A whole scenario. And I have put myself through misery. I have put myself through worry. I've woken up at 4:00 in the morning. I can't get back to sleep till 6. All these things have happened because of it. And then I find when I finally do get back to that person and I say something, friendly or innocent, and they come back to me, they're all friendly and everything else, I realize I don't even need to have that conversation with them because I'm the one that created the entire problem in the first place. So it is a struggle for me, for sure. And I just really like what you shared around that.
I read a book about 30 years ago called Traffic, and it was just about how cars were developed and why they chose what color lights to put up in the lines and all the different things, just about how we began to drive. And there was a chapter on drivers. And what was fascinating to me is that everybody thinks they're a good driver. Most people believe that they're really good at driving, but but they would be causing accidents all the time, and they didn't even realize it until they put videos in cars, and people would realize, oh, I cut that person off and I didn't even know about it, or I didn't turn this way or that way. And I think so often people are just driving along and they are hurting people without even knowing it. And so I think like you said, Ken, it's really important for us to say, was this accidental? And maybe I'm interpreting it in a wrong way. And again, that's why just the quick check-in to say, hey, I wanted to ask you about something that you said. Is it okay if I just check in with you on that before it gets elevated or upsetting, before the stories get going, before your whole weekend is shot because you've been talking and arguing with them while you're in the shower, right? You just say, hey, help me understand what's going on. And most of the time when you go right to the person and say, let me ask you about this, they're like, oh, no, I didn't even mean that. That wasn't what I was saying at all. There are times when that's not the case, but so many times that is. And if we fail to have the confidence to believe that we're significant, that we do have a voice, and that we can say, I want to check in with you, then we can just spiral out of control. So part of it is, again, having that confidence to be able to say, here's what I'd like to say. I felt this way when you did that. What a great, easy little tool. My mom taught me that when I was 15. I feel blank when you blank. And to be able to say that is such a powerful thing.
You know, I'm going to add to that though, too, because there's also a couple layers that come in here. So number one, and I struggle with this too. There's the people pleasing layer that comes in with this. And there's also, what's that other word I was thinking of? And I was getting ready to write it down and now it's gone. It'll come back to me, I know, because it's like right there on the edge. But intimidation, that was the other word. Yeah. I am very easily intimidated by people. And so I think for me, intimidation and people pleasing kind of are linked together. And here's how this plays out. So there might be a conflict. Let's play a scenario where somebody said something in a tone or whatever, or it could even be somebody that didn't respond to me via text message. That's a classic one. And all of a sudden it's been a day and your brain's just going crazy and different things like that. Well, one, I get intimidated at the idea of approaching that situation, like what's going on and different things like that. And number two, I think the people pleasing comes in because, I want to please everybody like that. I'm having a really hard time like explaining how the two connect, but I see that's kind of like the deeper levels with me. And that's kind of like how it happens. Like I get very intimidated very easily. And that's something that I've been working on, but that intimidation at times is brought on by my own self. And then there's times where it's not. And I will not approach the person. And the people pleasing, here we go. The people pleasing comes in because I always want to look the best in people's eyes. So if I think they are thinking a certain way, so now you're seeing how that's connecting in. I was trying to figure out how, because I had the connection and I'm like, how am I going to explain it? So I think those are also the deeper levels that happen as well. Those are all factors in it. Does that make sense? Are you getting what I'm throwing down there?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. There are like within the peacemaking section that I talked about earlier, like there are healthy ways to resolve conflict, but the two alternatives are to go on attack or to avoid. And when we're in this avoidance section, we're withdrawing the way that we can deal with hurt or pain is to get ourselves out of that situation, is to avoid it or to be away from it. Other people, often when someone gets hurt and they cry or they become very quiet, we say, oh, that's a sensitive person. But other people will go on the attack and they're just as sensitive, but their response is anger. And the way that they protect themselves is not by withdrawing or coming aside, it's going on the attack and intimidating the other person. And so those are two different but irresponsible ways to handle, again, dealing with the truth, because we have to be able to speak the truth, but we also have to be able to hear the truth, because I know that I'm not an objective person about myself. I don't see, I have blind spots. They call them blind spots for a reason, because I can't see them. And so I need other people in my life. I need to live in community with others who can speak into my life in ways that help me to grow and reveal there's areas where I need to grow. But if those people are harmful to me, if they're intimidating and they want to control me, I'm never going to entrust myself to them to hear that truth. And so part of that's why it's so important for us to live in relationship and to have communities, have people that we really trust, so that way we can have the confidence then when someone who doesn't have our best interests at heart, then we're able to say, you know what, I'm going to set a boundary here. I'm not going to do that. You're not going to talk to me that way. It's not okay for you to do that. But that comes, again, having the courage, because we know we're connected in relationship. And for so many of us, we didn't grow up in families. We didn't have these patterns taught to us or shown to us, or maybe like growing up, people told us that we were idiots or that we weren't valuable or weren't significant. And so we never really believed that or knew that. And so then our responses are either avoid or attack, instead of saying, I really do need to hear truth about me, but I also need to be able to speak truth to you about you. And when we have love and we have kindness and we have charity toward one another, then we're able to do that in a more confident way. But it's hard if we have been hurt.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yes, I love that. And, I've heard about, when we are confronted, that we respond in one of three ways. So there's the fight, the freeze, or the flight, which is kind of what you said. You either fight or you run away, right? I've also heard about this freezing that can happen. So, and sometimes there's a combination of a few of these things. So sometimes we fight, and we just fight with some people. Some people just run, and some people do a combo. So I've noticed in my life, I've tended to freeze and then run. That's been my automatic way of dealing with conflict in the past, is I freeze and then run. Although, interestingly, as I'm becoming more self-aware, nowadays when there's conflict, I tend to, initially I will freeze for a moment and go, oh, isn't that interesting, right? That something's happened that I'm now conflicted about. And then I will, rather than fight, I'll be more direct and I'll speak about it. I'll actually speak up about it. Whereas in the past, I would have internalized it and then held on to it. And then there'd be some passive aggressive type of behavior that might come out, so it's important to let this out, to express yourself. And in expressing yourself, ideally, if you can have a conversation with someone, is always much better than messaging someone, because messages can be very misconstrued and how people read that message. Relationships have ended over a text message, right? So, be very mindful of that. And as soon as possible, wherever possible, get on the phone, or even better, meet up in person with someone. Ideally, if you can control yourself and not beat the hell out of each other or shoot each other, as in America, ideally. But, whatever it takes, we want to have peace in our lives. Ideally, most people just want to be happy. If you say, what do you want? I just want to be happy. I just want to have a great life. Well, what does that look like for you? And we're talking about faith and being on purpose. Now, yes. Bob Proctor says, well, how do you find your purpose? Do what you love as much as possible. Do as much as you can of what you love. So coming from a faith perspective of being on purpose, or, your thoughts, what are your thoughts on this, Matt, of, what are some ways people can find their purpose, or know that they're even being on purpose, if they're maybe a little bit conflicted right now around their future and what they're doing and how they can move forward, and if they're feeling a bit stuck? What do you recommend?
Well, I think, maybe we could add another F to our flight, fight, freeze. We could respond with faith. And When we have faith, because if if you find yourself in a situation where you've got to lift something that's heavy, then you're much better off if you have been practicing lifting heavy things. You are prepared for the moment when it comes, and it's because you've done the hard things to get to that place, right? And so, it's the same in our relationships. If we're practicing the patterns of healthy conversations and we're doing the work to have these kinds of conversations, where the whole house isn't going to burn down. One of the images, I think about fire a lot when I think about conflict, because sometimes it feels like our house is burning down or the whole forest burns down. And I've used this illustration because, in the US a long time ago, there were there's natural forest fires that start because of lightning or other natural causes, but then campers were lighting fires and the forests were burning. And so they created this character called Smokey Bear. And he always said, only you can prevent forest fires. So we did a great job for decades on preventing forest fires from happening. But what happened was, even the natural fires that would normally burn in a forest, which would burn some of the unhealthy undergrowth there, that would actually create benefits for the soil to let the trees grow, those fires were put out too. So now you have all this underbrush, decades of underbrush that's been growing and growing. So when a fire came through that was difficult to stop, it would burn everything. And so what firefighters realized was they needed to have controlled burns. These are calculated burns to get rid of some of that undergrowth that made it so that way when a fire came through, not everything was wiped out. So I think about, from handling this from a faith standpoint, is having the confidence in myself and knowing who I am, so that way I'm able to enter into these kinds of conversations. And it really does take practice. It's something that we've got to work on. And if I find myself in avoidance, shrinking back and not talking, I've got to think about, well, maybe I need to remember how valuable I am and how important I am, because I was made by God. If I find myself being a peace breaker, going on the attack, I've got to understand, well, what is being threatened? What do I feel like is being threatened in me? My reputation, my opportunity, my job, that causes me to respond in such a defensive posture. And to take account of that and to respond and to say, well, if I'm in a conflict, what am I really going to lose? We have a lot of fears that we face when we engage in conflict. And one of them is, I don't want to be hurt again. I don't want to be misunderstood, and I don't want to lose things. And those are all, to me, those are fears that I've had about conflict. Like someone yelled at me or they cut me off. But if I really think, what I have to gain if I'm willing to practice conflict engagement is a restored relationship or more freedom. Sometimes when we engage in conflict with people, the relationship is restored to a good place. Sometimes it's reshaped. It's going to be different than it was before, but sometimes it's released. We can say, for my own benefit, it's not a good thing for me to spend time with this person, and it's okay to release that relationship in a way because it isn't healthy. And as we practice these things with faith, with confidence, then we really do get better at it. But the solution is never, even though it's understandable, is again to withdraw, because these patterns will continue to come to us until we're able to grow and to do it. So my encouragement for people is to reflect on their own life, to acknowledge that there's hurt that they've experienced. But we live, I think, in a broken world that's evidenced by the fighting and bitterness that takes place outside of us and also inside of us. But I do, from a faith standpoint, believe that if we're made in God's image, then we have dignity and value. And part of what we're called to do is to bring peace to this world. This is what I think when the command that God gave to Adam and Eve is to tend the garden, is to use your creativity to bring about flourishing. And you think about a garden, it takes a lot of work. You got to pull out weeds. You got to plant the right things. You got to water and fertilize. Only God can bring the growth. But as we tend those gardens and we work against the thorns and the thistles, then it creates beauty. And so each person, whether you're a gardener or a podcast host or an administrator or a teacher, what you can do is to use the natural resources of this world to bring about flourishing. And part of what that is to pull those weeds in your own life, in the lives of others, and to say, how do we make this a beautiful place together? And boy, if there isn't a time other than now, then we need people to say, I want to make a difference in this world. I want to be a person of peace, a person of reconciliation, a person of love, because we have never needed people like that to enter into relationships at work, in their schools, in their communities, in their churches, in their faith communities more than now, because of the division and the disagreement. And like you've said a number of times, it's so important to be able to speak the truth. But I think doing that in love is a key component. And when I say
Mm.
love, I don't necessarily mean a feeling, although it can include a feeling. The Bible talks a lot about love, but it's overwhelmingly an action that we take. So when I speak the truth to someone, that is an act of love. And when someone speaks the truth to me and I'm willing to listen and to really hear what they're saying, that's an act of love to them, because I just know that there's no way for me to understand myself without the community in which I live. I'm really dependent upon my family, my faith community, my friends, because they're the only ones usually they're going to tell me the truth about me in a way that I can hear it. So I'm counting on them. And so those are some of the ways that I think about how faith makes a difference for us.
I think
Beautifully said.
that's a key thing that you just said there towards the end. They are going to come back to you and speak to you, what however it is you said it there, but they're going to do it in a way to where they know that you're going to receive that well. And I think that's also a key factor, because my past experience has been with people that have, in the far past, has been with people that have tried to do that but have done it the wrong way, and it's left a bitter taste in my mouth. So it's made me a person that has a hard time even receiving correction from different types of people. And that's definitely something that I notice, even when it's done in the most loving way and it's done in the most respectful way. There it because of what's happened in the past, there's what I have noticed is there's always this spot in my heart that has a wall up now against that person. They never know it, they'll never see it, but there's a wall up. There's a protection. Like, I'm going to distance myself from that person now because of the way it's been, approached with me in the past. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that we all have those hurts and wounds that we've carried from the past, where people have spoken harshly to us, or we felt like failures, or we didn't get the job that we wanted, or we've just feel like we didn't amount to much, and hey, they were right.
Yeah.
But again, I just, one thing I do in my community is just want to remind people of like how much value that each person has. And when a person isn't acting in line with that value, when their behaviors are angry or bitter or whatever, it's just part of it is to remind people that you are significant, you are important, and to remember that reality, because those walls that we can create around our hearts, it is wise to have boundaries. It is wise to ensure that there are some people that don't have access to you to hurt you, but those walls can become traps for us, where it's like we're a bird in a cage and the door is open and we never leave the cage, even though we have the opportunity to do so. And so part of that is being in relationship, in community with people that you love and trust, that you give permission to tell the truth to you and being willing to hear it, but also to remember that ultimately, that if you are made by God in his image, you do have that value. And I have a couple of phrases that I really like, because there are certain people with whom I speak that I'm really going to listen to. I want to listen and hear everybody, but some people, when they're critical of me, I take more stock into it, because they're mature, they're wise, they're faithful, they've demonstrated that in life over time. And for others, sometimes I'll just say, thank you for your feedback, or duly noted. And that just means I heard what you said, but I'm probably not going to do anything about it because it's just, I think you're an important person, but I don't respect your opinion. And so I'm just not going to take that to heart. But I also know it's important for me as a leader to be able to listen to whatever is being said, and to, instead of seeing it as an attack on my personhood, as an opportunity that has been given for me to learn and grow as a person. And that's a key distinction, right? It's not my identity if someone is saying you should have done this or made this decision this way, or your speaking style or your personality. That's not my identity. But it is an opportunity for me to say, even if someone comes at me in a harsh way, is to say, what can I learn from this? How can I be a person, again, of compassion, of kindness, who is willing to grow without letting their statement define who I am? And that's a challenging thing to do. But I do think having community around us that can speak life into our lives, and then also, again, having some tools and rhythms that we can practice, because like anything, whether it's working out or riding a bike or playing the piano, these things take practice. We're not really good at them at first if we've never learned before. So we need people in our lives to encourage us and to give us these tools to help us to know how to essentially do the controlled burn without burning the whole house down.
I 100% agree. A couple things I wrote down, and then I know Aldwyn's like begging to say something. She hasn't had a chance.
Hanging. Yeah, go.
So this is so in first of all, I want to like say this. In me kind of like continue to come back, like this is a struggle, that's a struggle. I'm not trying to be negative or anything. I'm just trying to be kind of like an open book and give more room for more conversation there.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing you said there is, significance, being, significant and everything else. And one of the words I wrote down is identity. As you were talking about, I can't remember the exact words you used, but one of the things that I've really tried hard to do, especially in the recent years, is to allow myself to rest in where my real identity is found, which obviously is Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, if I'm resting there and my confidence is there, it doesn't matter what someone might say or do or any of those other things, because the only thing that really does matter is who God says I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always easy to wrap my head around. That's not always easy to latch on to, because there is the flesh there. Sometimes I actually want to hold the grudge, because that's the flesh. And then, the other thing you said is the phrase, thank you for that. But then you don't take it to heart. You don't do anything. My struggle with that is I do still tend to take it to heart, even though I politely say, thank you so much for that. And so that's my struggle. It is so easy for me to take that in and take it to heart, because that's a weak point for me that I'm actually still working my way through. And I have made some progress through that, thankfully. But those are the last things that I just kind of wanted to share. A little fragmented, because even though I wrote down what I wanted to say, I still lost the phrase that you had around significance and what you said there. When I wrote it down, I remembered, and when I spoke it, I was just like, okay, what was around that? So forgive my mind on that squirrely brain. But anyhow, I'm going to let Aldwyn share here.
Thank you, Ken. Did you just say something negative about yourself there, about your brain? Notice our conversations. Notice our conversations, my friends. There's been so much conversation that's been gold in what you've said. So many of the statements for both of you. And there's one thing came to mind, is what you resist persists. So if you have conflict in your life and you're resisting the conversation, or you're resisting dealing with it in some way, then it will potentially persist. And for anyone who knows Louise Hay's work, Heal Your Life. Now, Louise Hay, who's now no longer with us, unfortunately, but there's a fantastic book called Heal Your Life, where she talks about dis-ease in the body. If you have any dis-ease in the body, often it's linked to some kind of emotional, possibly trauma, or some kind of emotional upset that you've had in your life, some sort of emotional conflict. And this book actually shows that if you have, say sciatica, for example, that might lead to anger, or it might mean you had fear around something. And then she has positive affirmations around that, which is really, really powerful. So I do recommend, if you're resisting something, to have a look at why you're resisting that thing and can it be dealt with. And some things you just want to let go. But ideally you don't want to hang on to the anger around or frustration around that issue. Like, for example, I've got lots of people that owe me thousands of dollars in business, right? I've got lots of sort of what they say bad debtors. Now, I'm partly responsible for that because, I wasn't so good with following up on accounts, or people would say, oh, I haven't got the money right now, but I'll get it to you at some stage. And then I just let it go and let it go. And then meanwhile, 1 month turns into 1 year, and then 2 years, and it just goes on, and then they never pay, right? So sometimes, you also have to have structures and boundaries in place for that kind of stuff. But sometimes you also got to go, okay, well, I'm just going to let it go, because there is such a thing as karma. I do believe in karma. And I think what comes around goes around. I think if you're going to not be paying your bills with someone or not do the right thing by people, it's going to come back in other ways, possibly from other people anyway. So you just bless and release with love. This is what I do, right? And just let it go, right? Rather than holding on to the fact that people owe money, or, you got to take some responsibility here. There's some people that owe people money, and those people keep lending money to those people and they never get it back. Can you just loan me another $50,000? Oh, can you just loan me another $1,000? Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. And would you like to, I was going to say something really rude there. I was going to say, ask while you're at it. So that's just what came to mind. So, like, we will put up with crap sometimes in life until we get the message. Until we get that there is a full sentence called no, right? There's a full sentence called no. And look, yes. Admittedly, I still to this day let my boundaries down, and still am way too nice to way too many people, way too often. And then I have to pull myself up on it and go, okay, Aldwyn, if you're not happy about this, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And I have this conversation with myself, right? Because you either let it go, or you hang on to the frustration, which will then lead to disease in your body somehow, or you find a way to deal with it. And usually with just one conversation, you can resolve a lot of conflict. Now, interestingly, Matt, you mentioned earlier about traffic. Now, road rage is a massive thing, right?
Don't get me started on that one.
Now, road rage, how much conflict is caused on the roads? Now, I find I have conflict that happens when people throw rubbish out the window, or when they throw cigarette butts that are still lit, because they actually start a lot of fires, by the way. Plus, they pollute planet. I find a lot of road rage coming up when people throw rubbish out the window, or when they throw lit cigarette butts out the window. And of course, there's just some bad drivers on the road that you should never have got their license in the first place. Yes. So
they got their license at Walmart.
Yeah. And then, we've let a lot of migrants into our country. The Australian government's letting the whole world flood in at the moment. So I think we've got around 1.8 million migrants coming into Australia from a lot of third world countries. Now, in some of these third world countries, such as India, as an example, they love to just throw their rubbish everywhere. Okay. Now, maybe not just the Indians. I know in Turkey as well. Now, I've got family heritage in Turkey, and the rubbish that is in the streets in Turkey is absolutely mind-blowing. So people come from these other countries to Australia, and they think, oh, let's just litter Australia, right? Let's just throw our rubbish everywhere. Now, I went for a walk on the beach this morning. I went for a swim in the ocean. I came out of the ocean and I started to walk towards my car. And what did I see in the sand was about 8 or 9 bottles that people had just left there, plastic bottles. And I'm like, can you believe this? People just leave their rubbish on the sand, which eventually will end up in the ocean, which eventually that plastic will end up breaking down to small bits of plastic that the fish will then eat. The fish will then end up toxic. You will then eat the fish, and you'll end up with microtoxicity in your body. And did you know that one plastic bag in the ocean can kill a turtle? One plastic bag. The amount of rubbish I have seen in Bali. I went to Bali not long ago. Rubbish everywhere. I could not believe the amount of rubbish in the streets, in the ocean. In fact, I got a boat over to Gili Airs, one of the islands off Bali, and there was a moment in the middle of the ocean where there was about half an hour where all I could see was rubbish in the middle of the ocean. Now, this is a real concern, and this creates a lot of conflict for me, because I think, what the hell can I do about this? So today I picked up every single one of those bottles and I put them in the bin, right? Now, this is the thing. What are you going to do about it? Now, we can all impact some small parts of our world, but I was thinking to myself as I'm out in the ocean this morning, and and the waves were huge today, right? There were some massive waves. We had a full moon last night on the Gold Coast. It's a massive full moon, which of course brings up a lot of heightened emotions for people, is this full moon energy. And also with full moons come king tides. We get the big tides. And so there was a massive waves coming today. And there were moments when I got tumbled under the wave today. There were moments that I went under the wave. I went through the wave. There were moments that I rode the wave. There were moments that I actually body surfed the wave. And there were moments that I body surfed and tumbled through the wave today. And I thought to myself, as I was in the ocean, I thought, isn't this interesting? How much like life is this analogy right now of life will throw curveballs. Life will throw king tides at you. Life will throw things at you that you're either going to ride the wave, you're going to tumble with it and go flow with it, maybe tumble a bit, but then eventually you'll get up and you'll get out of the ocean. And you'll go, hey, that wasn't so bad after all. I survived, right? And a few years ago, I did have a near-death experience where I got swept out to sea, but thankfully, I did make it back alive. And you look through my socials, you'll see the whole story on that, right? I'm very grateful that I survived that experience out in the middle of the ocean in an area that was infested with sharks, right? I could have easily been taken at any moment, but I wasn't. And what that enabled me to do after that, coming back to shore, was I pressed the reset button on my life. When you have an experience in your life, you suddenly, everything looks different when you come back to shore. You
Sure.
suddenly think, well, am I doing exactly what I want to be doing in my life? Right? Is this really how I want to live my life? I could have died today, right? We tend to live like we've got tomorrow forever, right? Now,
Sure.
you've got tomorrow, because in Australia, it's tomorrow for you guys right now, right? As you said, there is definitely going to be tomorrow, because it's tomorrow in Australia for our American friends. And this is the thing, is that while there's going to be conflict over road rage, over things going on in your own life, over people in your life, where there's relationships, there's going to be some conflict, right? Even friendships, all friendships, at some point, there will be things that you disagree with, right? Like Ken and I, now we've never met each other. Now there's our 130th episode. There's there's things about Ken that annoy me. There's things about me that annoy Ken, but along just fine. And it's probably because we've never met in person. So we've got this great relationship from a distance, and we've got this mutual respect as well, right? And that's life. Is you're going to have challenges. It's all about how you're going to deal with the challenges in your life. How are you going to deal with the anger that you feel? Personally, this is what I think. I think if you have anger or upset over something in your life, it's a prompting from God, perhaps, or from the angels or your ancestors or whatever. It's a prompting to do something about it. Even just picking up that little bit of rubbish. I tell you what, I walked away with these 8 or 9 bottles of rubbish today, and I look back at the sand there and I thought, it's all clean now. I feel better. I've done my little bit in cleaning up that rubbish that someone else so inconsiderately just left there. And, it doesn't take much to pick up some rubbish and put it in the bin. It doesn't take much, but there's a lot of people that have apathy. They don't care. And often those people, I would assert, those people also hate their own lives. And those people probably also live in a rubbish tip themselves, and they probably put rubbish everywhere. And, I'm certainly not perfect, but how you do one thing is how you do everything. Right.
Yeah, when you're talking, it was a couple of things you said that really struck me is, there's an old phrase that goes back to Saint Augustine from the 4th century, I think. And he said, unity in the essentials, diversity in the non-essentials, and charity in all. And what that is helpful for me as a pastor in the church is to say, well, what are the things that are essential to life and to faith? Let's agree on those. And we should fight to the death for those. But what are non-essentials? Let's allow for there to be different points of view. And I think what we experience as we are a world where there are people moving from one place to another, there's migration from different places, that we see competing value systems, right? A Western value system or an Eastern value system. I've been to other places around the world where I've been surprised at how much trash is there. And I thought, well, how can you live this way with all this garbage? But in the West, it's really, we want to clean things up. And so part of it is to say, when do I say this is a value that I want to have? And like a trash-free society is a great thing. But recognizing that there are other worlds where I'll tell you an interesting story. I was at my it was in Ohio, which is a state in the Midwest, many years ago, and we spent the night there in this hotel. And I got home and I had bites all down my arm and side, and I was like, "What? Where are these bites from?" And I realized that I had been bit by bed bugs in the hotel. And I was like, "That's kind of gross." I don't. So I called the hotel to tell them, and they didn't care. They weren't from our country. They were just from a country that it's not a big deal. And so I thought that's crazy, because to me it was like I had to get all my furniture out, or my mattress out, my suitcase, my clothes. We did all this stuff to try to get rid of these bed bugs. Thankfully, they didn't make it into my home, because they can get into your suitcase and you can transfer them around. That's how they spread. But I was like, this is gross. Come on. But in other cultures, it isn't a big deal. And so part of it for us is to say, okay, in this community, as we live together, what are the things that are important, and why do we value this? Why is having an environment that address, not only is it unsightly to have trash, but it's to say these are these microplastics. And so for us is to, because my tendency would just be to be mad at someone for not doing it, but really we have an opportunity to say this is a better way of living. Can I check in with you on this? Now, you got to be careful on who you talk to if you don't know them, but to say this is something that's important to us as a culture, because not only is it makes it our place, we're tending this garden and keeping it beautiful, but we also care about our long-term health and helping to decide, is this maybe not an ultimate matter, but an essential matter for how we live together. And so then having the confidence to say, I'd like to talk to you about this, or to say, how do we foster this in our communities where we do have a number of people who are from a different place? What can I do to invest in those communities and to support them as they learn how to become assimilated into culture, while also recognizing that they do bring beauty because they see the world in a different way as well? And those, that happens in relationship, is when we get closer to people and we see people, we understand their story and what they've been through. That's really helpful for me. And so but it does take conversation and it does take work, because living in community is hard. It takes energy and conversation. And there's a tendency for us to say, I'm gonna live on my own. I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna surround myself with people who are just like me. But I also know that, like, for me, one of the beauties of living in different places around America, which is a pretty diverse country, is to just see the different ways that God has created people, and to be able to say, that's not what I would choose for myself, but I also want you to have the freedom to live the way you want to live, within the scope of how we understand our value system, and helping people to learn that without condemning them for not even knowing, because for many people, they don't have a clue about that. So just figuring that out.
The other thing that I kind of wanted to share here too is, and it kind of stems around some of the things Aldwyn was sharing as well. In every circumstance, like what you shared about, tumbling through the waves and riding some of them and different things like that. Yeah, that's a lot like life. And you can become overwhelmed and overcome by that. And so here's the way I'm going to word it. In every circumstance, you have a choice. You can either become a victim of that circumstance, throw a temper tantrum, whine to God, and your prayers are not necessarily in line with, Lord, what are you trying to teach me? What's your will through this? Da 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 da. Your prayers are, I hate this, God, why? And all this other stuff. You're like this little kid throwing a little temper tantrum. That's becoming a victim. Now, I'm also going to say here, expressing to God how you actually feel about the circumstance, that's okay. He can take that. But it's a whole nother thing when you're just like throwing a little temper tantrum, whining like a little baby, and all that kind of stuff. You can tell God how you feel. He can take it. And that's healthy, and that's okay. Now, here's the second thing, though. In every circumstance, you have a choice. You can become a victim of that circumstance, or you can choose the higher road and take control. That doesn't mean, however, the circumstance, the storm, has stopped raging around you. It just means you have chosen to take a different path through that, one that is empowering. one that's looking to God, one that is trusting in him, as hard as that is during a storm. Trust me, I know. But you have a choice in every circumstance. And, count it, James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. It's on my screen over here. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Why? Because that produces growth. It increases your faith. It causes you to grow. And the way that happens is when you take that circumstance, that conflict, whatever you're going through at that time, the conflict, and you choose to learn from it, take the higher road. That's where the growth comes in. So I'll also share that there.
Yeah, there's a really big difference between being a victim and being a survivor. And Aldwyn, you talked about surviving that storm, and you gave you real clarity. When you have a moment like that, when you face a debilitating diagnosis or a near-death experience or something terrible, it really makes you think, what is essential? What is the most important thing? And that may mean that some conflicts that I used to engage in or want to deal with, I can say it's not a big deal. I'm gonna overlook that. And I think about what's reconciliation with God is when our relationship with God is restored rightly. I believe that Jesus allows us to have a right relationship with God. But then reconciliation is also me having right relationships with others, where I've spoken the truth to them. They've been able to speak truth to me, and we love each other. We may not like each other as much. We may not agree on everything, but we have relationship, and I know that person is for me because they care about me enough to hear me. And it's in part because I've cared enough about them to say, help me understand what you're going through and what you're facing. And so then that allows me not just to survive a difficult thing, but to thrive, because it's that opportunity to face something so hard that you say, wait a second, what's really important here? What's the most important thing? What do I want to, and this goes back to the question that you asked earlier, is like, what's my purpose in life? Why do I even exist? Is it just to make money? Is it just to have followers? Is it just to get respect from people? If I'm living for something like that, I'm going to be chasing that all the time. What am I living for? And if I understand who I am, then I can understand what I'm called to do, which I believe is to love God and to serve others. And I can do that in the unique way that I do, whether it's teaching or being in medicine or law enforcement or mercy ministry or whatever it is, that God wants to use me to bless others. And he allows me also, and this is a really important thing that appears throughout the Bible, is just, what does suffering do in our lives? Because there's a tendency for me to want to have a life that's, up and to the right, always doing well, higher productivity, people like me, more whatever. But God often allows us to experience difficult things, but it's in those moments of suffering and difficulty that I am willing to pause and to reflect and to say, what is the most important? It's my family, it's my relationships, it's the calling that I've been given. And I'm so thankful for those difficult things. I look back on my life the last 25, 30 years, and I realize that I've learned way more from the hard things than I did the easy things.
It's funny. Since around 2008. So let me kind of reverse and go back. So back around 2004-ish, somewhere around there, I began exploring being a personal assistant on my own as a business. Eventually, I developed that into kind of like my own brand, worked at it, did some advertising. This is when they had things like the Penny Saver, and which I'm pretty sure you remember, Matt. The Penny Saver. We actually had yellow pages. We had so I was doing that kind of advertisement, not the kind of advertisement we see on Facebook and stuff like that, the old school stuff. And I worked at it, and I was starting to get a really good client base for my independent personal assistant business. 2007 was my best year yet. I was actually getting a really good flow of money in. I was renting rooms at my house. I was doing really well financially. Then 2008 hit, the fall of the market. And within 3 months, I'd become a luxury. All my clients dropped me within that time frame. from that point forward, I swear it's like I went from one thing to another, one network marketing company to another, to another, to another thing, to another thing. And I was constantly throughout many of those years trying to find where I would land my feet again. And so I'm saying all this in the aspect of your calling, God's call on your life. And so all the way up to 2020, I feel like that's kind of what I did. One thing after another, just trying to find my ground. When am I going to, be, finally become a success? When am I going to finally this, Summer of 2020 is when God made it very clear what my calling was. And that's what I currently do now, which is Mastery Weight Loss. I'm a weight loss coach. And that is God's call on my life. But also in that, not just a weight loss coach. With all the research that I've done over the last 6 years or so, and everything I've discovered about the health, wellness, and food industry, and the lies and deception that is in that, it has now become my literal passion to expose every one of those lies and empower every person that God brings into my world with the truth, and give them a foundation that they can stand on, that they'll never be moved from again. That is God's calling on my life. I know that that's what God has called me to do. And that's my joy. That's what I stand in. That's my purpose, and I share all that, not to do any kind of shameless plug or anything like that, but I share all that because you had mentioned, God's calling. The thing about it is it took me years to finally get to where God was calling me to. Why? Maybe I just needed to learn some things through that, but there still is a mystery on, Lord, why did you take so long to do that? But anyhow, just thought I would share that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Sometimes those journeys feel so long, but I know that it's so much of it is not about where we're going to go, but who we become along the journey. And
That's true.
And just like there's this sense that if I can get to this place, then I'll be happy. But really, you've got to find joy in the midst of the sorrow and the suffering, in relationships and in God's presence, and realizing that this is the best life you have is right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, love all of this today. It's been such a great show. Truth About Conflict. We are coming to wrapping up time soon. I did think of the Serenity Prayer, which we have shared here before, but I'm going to actually read it again because it's a good reminder that there's a lot we can't control in life. Like right now, I have someone in the background who's making noise. Now, I said to that person, I'm about to do a show. Please don't make any noise. And they've been making a hell of a lot of noise in the background. So I'm feeling a little bit of conflict building up at the moment, but I know there's only so much I can control right now. I am on a live stream, which means I am not going to get off the live stream to yell at somebody to come back to the live stream. So instead, I'm going to share about it. And, so
and I'm laughing because this is not a one-time occurrence.
No. Happens often. There's someone in my life that drives me freaking crazy, and I've been putting up with it for way too long. So let's see what happens from here. But anyway, the Serenity Prayer reads, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace. So may I remind all of our friends here tuning in live, or if you're on the replay, there is only so much you can control in life. So notice how you respond to any situation, and always ask yourself, how is this happening for me? Rather than why is this happening to me and being the victim of that circumstance, how is this happening for me? So I know that this is happening for me to teach me about boundaries, to teach me about speaking up more, to teach me about obviously setting some stronger boundaries, either asking this person who's annoying me to leave the house, which I actually did this morning, but he's still here. So he's not going anywhere. So, and now he's starting to carry on the background because he can hear me. So, having some stronger boundaries. My ex-boyfriend, by the way. But anyway, we're not together. Okay, we're friends. We're kind of like an old married couple. we're friends that drive each other completely bonkers, but somehow we put up with each other. And same time, there's a reason we attract certain people into our lives, and often they say opposites attract, and opposites can also really repel. So if you do find yourself getting worked up and a bit of conflict around the people in your life over this Easter period, I do recommend you take a deep breath and let it out, and then decide in the next moment, what are you going to do about it? So wrapping up, final thoughts on the truth about conflict, Matt.
Yeah, well, I would just, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, because you're right. There are some things that we can control. And one line in there that I love, and that's really why I named my school community Courage to Reconcile, is it does take courage to do this. It's not for the weak of heart. It takes a sense that I'm worth saying something. I have a voice. The voice needs to be heard. And I want to be able to talk about how I'm experiencing this issue or this conflict in this world. And again, one of the reasons why I'm so committed to this for individuals is because I really do think that there are forces in the world that want to keep us divided, polarized, separated, and that when we can be reconciled to one another in our most intimate relationships, that makes us not impervious, but resistant to that kind of division that that foreign governments are trying to attack us with, and to say, I could be reconciled to God and to other people in my life. But it does take courage. And it also takes courage to be able to give people the freedom to say, will you speak the truth to me? Let me hear what you say so that I can be the person that I'm supposed to be. I'm not going to be perfect, but I need to learn and grow. I want my life to reflect more the life that Jesus had, who on the one hand was kind, was patient, and was loving, but he was also so mad about the injustice in the temple that he flipped over tables. So to live with that passion and that compassion, and the only way that I'm going to learn how to do that is when the people who love me, and as I spend time in God's word, that reveal to me, these are areas where I can still learn and grow. But so that takes courage too. And so if your listeners are interested in learning more about how to have some practical tools for that, I'd love to have them join me in my community, Courage to Reconcile, which is in school.
Beautiful. I'll pop that up here on the screen. And do you have a favorite quote or motto that you'd like to share with us today, Matt?
Well, I had a podcast a while ago, but COVID killed it because it was just too much going on. And it was called Take Courage. And I want to live with courage. I want to live in a way that fulfills the call that God has for me. I want to do that with compassion and gentleness and kindness. I heard a great definition of meekness one time. We don't really hear that word too often, but meekness is being angry at the right things for the right reason for the right amount of time. So I want to be angry,
having that anger under control. So
that's right.
Another word for meekness is power under control.
There you go. Yeah. And because there are things in this world that we should be angry about: injustice, racism, and all the hurt that's happening. But I also know that if I'm going nuts about that, that's not a healthy way for me to live. So that, I think, is living with courage, is to be able to step in to protect the vulnerable, to care about people, to serve others, and also make a difference, because I know that our world needs it. And I've learned so much about conflict and resolution that I want to be able to share that with others. So again, it's just take courage is what I would say.
Lovely. I absolutely love it. Absolutely. Like, animal cruelty really gets me going. I don't get angry about too much nowadays, but there's times when I see animal cruelty that I wish I had a gun, right? That's the times when I'm quite happy to, exercise my anger and upset at animal cruelty. That really, really, really upsets me. Or I get upset by it, right? It's not actually, it's I see it and I experience it, and I choose to be upset by it. I mean, it's very hard to choose to be happy by something that you don't like. I mean, some people it's around child sexual abuse, or, there are a lot of injustices in the world. There's people that, a lot of domestic violence going on, at the moment. It's huge, because there's a lot of hurting people out there. There's a lot of people really struggling right now. So let's exercise more kindness and compassion and more self-love, because those that hate themselves, they are harmful to themselves, harmful to others, and harmful to animals and to our babies and children as well. So, the more self-love we can have, coming back to that, the more we love our lives, and the more we can find that peace and compassion within ourselves, the more that we will reflect that on the outer world. And, with moments of course, speak your truth the whole way. And if you do see any animal cruelty, or you see anyone being harmful to animals or anything like to children or anything like that, make sure you capture some video footage or photos of what's going on. Speak your truth about it. Report it to authorities. Do whatever you need to do to stop it happening. We need to speak up, because I do believe if we watch this kind of crap go on in the world and we don't say anything about it, then we are being part of the problem. So if you're noticing that there is some cruelty around you and you haven't said anything about it, you haven't reported it to the authorities, and there are some good people in authority situations as well. We know there are some good people amongst all the corruption. Some. There's a few select people that I'm sure have good intentions and haven't been corrupted by the evil ways of those elite few that seem to be controlling everything in this version of reality. And that's another reminder: we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay, so have fun with this journey of life that we're on, and I do recommend make the most of all of the moments and notice what are the learnings in everything that is coming your way. There's a reason you have been shown certain situations in your life. So here's to you speaking up more about that. Now, Ken, final words on this topic?
Well, first of all, final words, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget to say it, but Matt, you were talking about how you used to have a podcast until 2020 hit. I am going to say, speaking of calling, it's time to return to that podcast and revive it. Because you got a powerful message to say. Now is the time, and why not? You might be starting again from the beginning, from scratch, but I can tell you're a natural like this. You did great on the interview with me. You did great on today's show. Just get out there, get a microphone inside, in front of your face, and just start speaking. Just do it.
Thanks,
forget about
I appreciate your encouragement.
Yeah.
Yes. I was thinking the same thing. I'm just going to butt in because I was thinking the same thing. You read my mind. And so you said COVID, because I noticed in your terminology there, Matt, you mentioned that COVID stopped the podcast, right? Because of COVID. A lot of people have blamed COVID for all sorts of things, right? But really, let's take responsibility right now.
That's right.
Some people call it convid. Convid. I think that's quite a good term for COVID, is convid. But anyway, that's another one. Yes, there's lots of terms for what's happened during this time, and life will keep throwing curveballs at you. So, yes, you would be an amazing podcast host. And Ken and I are both looking forward to being on your show, Matt. So no pressure.
There we go.
All right, I've got 2 guests lined up. So once I get through this, then I will consider it. What COVID revealed was that I was not that into it, maybe.
There you go. Maybe. There you go. Because, as Dr. John DeMartini says, we will do something if it's high in our values. If something is not high in our values, we will avoid it. We will procrastinate. We will keep putting it off until we actually find some value in doing it. And look at the number of people you can impact, Matt, by doing your show again.
Yes, exactly. I'll close with this, and then I will transition into my little spew, if you will. But I'll close with this. So if you're gonna start it back up again, don't try. Just do it. I'll never forget an illustration that was shown to me on a stage, and I remember the first time it was shown to me. I remember I was suspicious. I'm like, okay, was this planned out or is that actually real? But here's the thing. So the person that was the host on stage brought up a guest in the audience. And he asked this guest to take thumb and first finger here and put them together and hold them together as tightly as they possibly could. And then he took his finger and put it in between here. And he says, now I want you to repeat after me. I will try to love my wife. And he could always do this, right? And then he said, all right, I'm going to do it again. Repeat after me. I will love my wife. He couldn't take his finger out. And so I'm going to kind of leave you with that. Don't try. Just do it. If you're going to do it. All right. Anyhow.
I appreciate the encouragement, guys. I'll consider it. I just have been so excited. I've been so excited about this Courage to Reconcile ministry, that seeing the transformation for people, that's really where my heart is right now, to help people. But I'll think about it.
That makes sense. All right. I'm going to drop it now. Okay.
Yes.
So anyhow.
I just to that. Sorry, quickly. I just want to add. It's like try to drop a pen. Try this Landmark Education. I've done a lot of work with them, right? And they often say try to drop the pen. And like you try and it's not dropping, right? But just drop the pen. It's like that easy. And it's that easy to resolve conflict in our lives. But in our minds, it becomes like a friggin' monster of a thing often to resolve whatever conflict is going on, whether it's saying, yes, I'm going to do something, and then we don't do it. We procrastinate, or whatever it is. Just notice where you've got conflict in your life, and you either deal with it. Don't try anything, right? This is in general for everyone, not just you, Matt. We all do this at different times, right? We all have things that we procrastinate about. We say we're going to do that run tomorrow. We're going to start exercising tomorrow. We're going to get up early, and we're going to eat healthy after we have this bit of chocolate cake, whatever it is, right? We all have moments that we don't honor ourselves, and we say, oh yeah, I'll try and lose weight. Oh yeah, I'll try. I've been trying to stop smoking. I've been trying, just stop it. Just stop it and watch the video. Stop it on YouTube. It's brilliant. Anyway, Ken,
that's a classic video. By the way, I remember the first time somebody showed me that, I just started laughing hysterically. It's powerful, but it's classic and it's funny. Anyhow, so how can people reach out to me? How can people connect with me? How can people work with me? Well, what I have done is I have, through my website, created a customized connect page. It's very simple and it's very plain. And it is www.masteryweightloss.com/connect. And so you're going to find 4 buttons on that website. And one of them is a button to join my mini educational boot camp. So I've lost 62.5 pounds and I've kept it off for 7+ years now without a diet, having that be sustainable. And right now I'm actually giving away my 3 secrets to help you to lose weight, feel energized, and get healthy without starving or without dieting. In 3 one-on-one live sessions with me, I expose the 3 biggest lies that are keeping people sick, stuck, and overweight, because that's how that industry makes money. And I show them how they can finally lose the weight and keep it off for good and do it in a way that honors God. And so to get into my world and to join that mini educational boot camp, which is very reasonably priced, there's 4 buttons on that page. At the top is button to get into my boot camp. The other one is to book a strategy call with me. Maybe you don't know if my boot camp is the right next step for you. Well, let's get on a free strategy call. Let's unpack what that looks like and what your next steps may look like. The last 2 buttons are to connect with me on Facebook and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So once again, that is www.masteryweightloss.com/connect. And my quotes, I'm actually going to do 2 of them, and they are both verses from the Bible. And so the first one is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. The next one is Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. Chapter 3, verse 13. Forgive each other as the Lord has forgiven you.
Yes, we're all sinners, aren't we? We've all had our moments of sinning. That's for damn sure. That's why some of us need to confess and confess and confess and go into that confession box until the day we die. But, at the end of the day, look, I'm sure everyone is doing the best they can with what they have available. Okay, so, let's just give each other a bit of grace as well on that one.
Always grace. Always grace.
Oh my gosh, I've absolutely loved this today. Now, for those who want to connect with me, just hop along to linktree/Aldwyn. It's linktr.ee/Aldwyn. In there, you will see we have an amazing retreat coming up next weekend on the Gold Coast from the 10th to the 12th of April. It's called Impact Change Retreat. It's about nourishing your mind, body, soul, and amplifying your impact. It's going to be phenomenal. We've got sound healers, we've got breath work, we've got yoga, we've got Tai Chi, we've got experts on storytelling, we've got conscious cash flow, we've got media personalities. It's going to be amazing, amazing, amazing. So for those on the Gold Coast or in this area, or if you're not, it's worth flying in for this. It's going to be a fantastic 3-day event from Friday the 10th of April till the 12th of April. 3 big days. It's going to be absolutely brilliant, fully catered event. So check out the details at the top of my link tree. Also there you will find a link to my website. We have 5 top tips to get TV exposure for yourself. Yes, there are some great people in the media industry. I worked in mainstream media for over 20 years myself. And there are a lot of great journalists and a lot of great media outlets out there, even though we do have this propaganda through mainstream media that happens. But we need to look beyond that, and we need to keep standing, I believe, for more good news, more positivity. And that's what I stand for with the Global Good News Challenge that we do every single month. It's free. It's free marketing for you to share gratitude and good news on social media. So I recommend you do that. We have an April challenge right now, 4-day challenge for April, where people share gratitude and good news. And you will feel amazing when you do these live videos, and so will people who see your videos. The whole idea is to decrease depression and suicide rates and lift the energy on the planet. So you see all the links there, my YouTube channel, everything else, check it all out, linktree/Aldwyn. You'll see it all over my social media as well. All right, now my quote today, I have a great one here. This one's actually from Gandhi. It says, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. It takes courage, right? That is a fantastic. Another one by Mahatma Gandhi here. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with it. Yeah. And interestingly, watching a podcast by Mel Robbins on overwhelm, how to deal with overwhelm. And she says there's a difference between stress and overwhelm. Stress is a normal part of life. You're going to have times when you're going to feel stress. There's good stress and bad stress. Overwhelm is when you feel like the whole world is caving in on you. And that's when moments like a nervous breakdown, as I had a few weeks ago. When you have your nervous breakdown moments, it's usually your body just telling you to peace out, as they say in America, to have some time for you, to have some self-nurturing, self-love time. Make time for you to connect with nature, to ground yourself, to, whatever it is, to just do whatever your body needs to nurture yourself, because you're not going to be able to show up and be able to help others if you are feeling depleted. So notice your own energy. Care for yourself. Hello, Charles. Good to see you from Hong Kong. Charles Caldwell's with us. Thank you so much, everyone who's joined us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Let us know what you thought in the comments. Please share the love as well. Let people know what you thought of the show. Share the love. Subscribe to our channel, all that sort of stuff. Thank you so much, Matt, for being with us. Ken, any final words before we wrap up?
No, just always remember you have a choice. You can either be a victim or you can choose the higher road.
Yes. I'll take the high road. You take the low road. Anyway, and do no, we don't want anyone taking the low road. Well, unless you find something interesting down the low road that you want to check out on the way. But always want to be coming from a place of love for ourselves, for others. Have a beautiful Easter, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on Total Truth Show. It's a wrap on episode 130, The Truth About Conflict. Much love. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ken. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.